We begin Season 2 of Star Trek The Original Series with Amok time after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and for the first time, DeForest Kelley is in the opening credits as one of the stars. In the first season, it was just William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, but now DeForest Kelley. It finally defines the three characters as being kind of the lead group. That is to say that Kirk's decisions are always balanced between Spock's logic and McCoy's more humanistic approach. And in this first one, they have taken the fan mail that Leonard Nimoy has been receiving over the first season seriously and have decided to focus some episodes specifically on Spock and open the season with this, which tells you more about Spock's backstory. Now, all through the first season, Spock, of course, has been an important character, and he has been not really in the background at all, but as such a mysterious character, they found out fairly soon, the production crew found out pretty soon, that he was getting a whole lot more fan mail than anybody else on the show. And so they decided to make this a possibility of having more Spock stories, since he's the center of interest. Now, Shatner, being a very competitive fellow himself, decided that we have to balance this a little bit, and I believe that is when they had their contracts tied together, where everything that Leonard Nimoy would get, William Shatner would get, like a recording contract, like book deals, like rights to do things all the way up through the Star Trek films. His ability to do Star Trek V, to direct Star Trek V, was because Nimoy had gotten to direct Star Trek IV. And they mentioned some things that haven't been mentioned since that are kind of interesting, like planique soup, which is a delicacy on Vulcan. It's some kind of soup that I believe is purple in color from the splatter it made on the corridor walls. We have also Finagle's law that no matter what port you come into, it's not going to be the port you want to come into. Kind of a funny little thing. I don't believe it actually exists. They talk about Ponfar. This was, of course, used in this episode and mentioned also in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, which is another situation of describing the madness that comes upon Vulcans once every 7 years or so. And they don't talk about it being once every 7 years in this episode, but it is explained to someone later on in the series. We hear about the Aldebaran shell moth, who is what McCoy uses to compare Spock's non-communicative stance in this episode. So we hear of some foreign creatures, including the great eel birds of Regulus 5 that Spock talks about in mating habits of every 7 years, or every 11 years in the case of the eel birds of Regulus 5. But this is also the first time we see Ensign Chekhov, and he and Sulu have lines that they're kind of not exactly the comic relief, but they do show some normalcy on the bridge of what people are saying while all the action is going on. It's an interesting thing. Unfortunately, they don't use it too much. It's here and there, but Chekhov and Sulu do have some decent lines other than, I don't know what it is, Captain, of course, plotted and set, but they talk to each other, so that's kind of nice. Then we see T'Pring for the first time. She is reintroduced in Strange New Worlds. And in this case, they mention that at 7 years of age, they are not exactly betrothed, but they are mind melded, where they are promised to each other to a certain time to be husband and wife. And finally, an expression, hot as Vulcan, McCoy talks about. He says, I know where that saying comes from. I think the first season in the original series is one of kind of finding their way. The second season, they know what they're about. They do some of the best stories in the second season. They have some clinkers, but they have some solid stories in here. And it is the one, if you were only to see one season, that would be the one to see in Star Trek, the original series. I'd like to know what you think about it. Please put it in the comments below. And of course, you can subscribe and like the channel while you're there. We hope that you will. And I'll let you know that we will continue our retro reviews as the first run shows are going on hiatus. We'll continue to talk about this. We may, if we have time, pick up one of the other series. Not Next Generation, but perhaps Deep Space Nine. So we will be considering that. But until next time, don't go far.